All right, today's lesson objectives. Students solve and graph compound inequalities. So what is a compound inequality? Compound means there's more than one. It's two inequalities that are combined with either the word and or. Two inequalities combined with and or. So the first one we're going to talk about is the kind that have the word and in them. If it's and, it's an intersection of two inequalities. It's where they overlap. So they overlap, and it must be true for both of them. Both must be true. Okay, so when we have the word and, because think about it. If your mom says to you, you can go over to your friend's house as long as you do the dishes and take out the trash. Can you do only one of those and still go? No, they both have to be true. Okay, so it's the same thing with an inequality. X has to be less than 10 and X has to be greater than 0. So when you guys do these, you're not going to graph them individually, but I'm going to graph them individually just this time, one time, so you can see how it works, how the overlap works. Okay, so if I'm going to graph X is less than 10, what kind of circle is going to be on the 10? Open circle, and it's going to go to the left that way. Okay, if I wanted to graph X is greater than 0, it's also an open circle, right?
Yeah.
And this time it's going to the right. Okay, so what I want to look at is where do they overlap each other? And that's what we graph for the compound inequality. So they have an open circle on the 0 and an open circle on the 10, and it's everything in between. Okay? So another way that you can write X is less than 10 and X is greater than 0 is you could also write it as X is between 0 and 10. So 0 is less than X, which is less than 10. That's another way to write the same inequality. And what that means in words, if you had to describe the solution in words, it would be all real numbers between 0 and 10. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay. All right, so I'll have one more example here that I'll do in your notes. So this is usually how your and inequalities are going to be written. They're not going to have them written separately as this and that. They're usually going to put them together in like 3 pieces like this. So we'll have -5 is less than x plus 1 is less than 2. So if I wanted to get the x by itself, what's the opposite of adding 1? Subtracting 1. So whatever I do to the middle part, I have to do to the 2 sides as well. So I need to subtract the 1 on the left and subtract the 1 on the right also. And then if I do that, -5 and -1 is -6. And then I just have x in the middle. And 2 minus 1 is 1. So now I've got all real numbers between -6 and 1. So are we talking about open or closed circles? Open circles on this one. So here's -6, 1. All right, so we're going to have an open circle on the -6 and an open circle on the 1, and it's all real numbers between there. Because again, if you look at it, if you look just at this part of the inequality, that's x is greater than -6, right? And then if you look at this part of the inequality, that's x is less than 1. Okay, so that's how you would write it with the and. But like I said, most of the time they're going to leave it in the middle like that. Okay? So this one's for you guys to do on your whiteboards. All right, so most of you who did it got it right. You had to add 10 to both sides, or all three parts rather, and you get 1 is less than x, which is less than 5, so it's all real numbers between 1 and 5. All right, this one's for your notes. Okay, this one's going to take more than one step to do it, but it's just like we do with equations. You want to get the x alone. So if I want to get x alone, what's the opposite of subtracting 1? Adding 1. So we're going to add 1 to all three parts. And then I have 9 is less than 3x, which is less than or equal to 12. Okay, so to get rid of that 3 in front of the x, what do we need to do? Divide by 3. All right, so then when we divide, we get 3 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 4. So what kind of circle is going to be on the 3? Open circle on the 3. What about the 4? Closed circle. And so that's what the graph should look like on that one. All right, so this next one is for you guys to do on your whiteboards. Solve it and graph it, please. Okay, so it looks like most of you got it. First you had to subtract the 4 from both sides, and then you had to divide by 2, so -1 is less than x, which is less than 4. So open circles, all real numbers between -1 and 4. Okay. All right, now if they have the word or, it's just the two graphs combined. And only one has to be true. Okay, only one of them has to be true. So, like the example I gave earlier, if you either take out the trash or do the dishes, you can go hang out with your friend. Do you have to do both of them? No, you only have to do one of them. So it's the same thing with our inequalities. So basically you just graph them both on the same number line. So if x is less than 0, that would be an open circle on the 0 going to the left. Or x is greater than 10, that would be an open circle going to the right. So you can kind of think of, it's kind of like the oars of a boat, right? They're sticking out from the boat, the oars. When it's an oar graph, they're going opposite directions of each other. So, for example, we have 8 plus t is greater than or equal to 7, or 8 plus t is less than 2. So just like we did the and ones, we're going to get the variable alone, in this case t. So we subtract 8 on all of them, and we get t is greater than or equal to -1, or t is less than -6. Oops. I wasn't paying attention to my numbers. Okay, so in this case, the less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to -1, that one's going to be a closed circle going to the right, and then less than -6, open circle going to the left.